Hello, everyone. If you could just give us one moment to get started here, we'll get our cameras ready. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. If this is your first time with us, welcome. We're glad you're all here today for another episode of Cooking Connected. So my name is Jordan. Joining me is my coworker, Sajwa. We'll see her in just a moment. She's just getting her cameras ready. There she is. All right, so both myself and Sajwa are program coordinators for the Cooking Matters Minnesota program. We partner with the University of Minnesota Extension. So normally a Cooking Matters class is an in-person nutrition-based cooking class. Classes have a nutrition educator. I'm sorry, I'm having trouble talking today. Classes have a nutrition educator and a chef that work together to teach our participants how to make a healthy, delicious, and affordable meal. We also learn a little bit about nutrition and decreasing our grocery budget as well. So today we're going to follow that same format. Sajwa is going to be our chef, and I will be our nutrition educator. We are going to be making a creamy coconut chickpea curry today. It's a really awesome recipe, and we would like to thank Cheryl Malik with 40aprons.com for today's recipe. So go ahead and check out 40aprons.com to get the link. We will post that in the description box below as well. Today we're going to be following the same as our class format. And, as always, we're looking to connect with our community, learn some nutrition topics, and some tips and tricks to decrease our grocery budget. We're also going to learn how to make a healthy, delicious, and affordable meal together. So just like every week, we do have another survey for you guys to take. So please take our survey. It helps us to, make our videos better and get feedback from you guys. For this survey, you will need a program code, which I have here. This week's program code is E097393. And again, the survey will be in the description box below when we post the video, as well as the program code. So thank you in advance for that feedback. We really appreciate it. With that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Sajwa.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us again for this week's episode of Cooking Connected. I'm really looking forward to doing this creamy coconut chickpea curry. So many C's in that one. Try saying that 5 times fast. And the awesome thing about this recipe is that it's actually vegan. So if that's a diet choice that you've made for your life, this would be a great option to add as a meal. Jordan, what's your favorite part about this recipe?
I really like how quick it is. My husband and I make this recipe a lot because it is kind of a quick meal that we can throw together on a night that we really don't want to cook too much, a big fancy meal. So this is a really great recipe for one of those quick meals.
Awesome. Well, I can certainly say that even though it's quick and it's not going to be a big fancy meal, it will leave you feeling fancy when you finish eating it. It's pretty good. So let's get started. Before we actually hop into things, let's talk about a few Cooking Matters basics. We always like to start by reminding you guys to clean and sanitize your cooking space to make sure that our space is good and that our food is going to be good for our bodies. And then second, we want to make sure that we're washing our hands. 20 seconds on that guy, getting in between your fingers, around your wrists, and underneath any fingernails. That's a really important step when you're in the kitchen. And then finally, we always like to make reference to mise en place and setting up your space when you're cooking. This just saves you time, especially if you're trying a new recipe. And if you're working with, for example, another recipe that might have meat or something, you're preventing cross-contamination by having everything out and ready to go. So it's a good planning step for anyone in the kitchen, new or old. So let's go ahead and get started. Let me just adjust my ankle here. All right, that looks good to me. So I do want to mention, I have already washed all of my vegetables and wiped the tops of all of my cans. So I just want to make sure that's known. You guys should make sure you take that step too. All right, so what we want to do is, the first instruction says to heat our oil in a skillet over medium heat. I'm going to first go ahead and cut up my onions and all of the things that I'm going to be cooking so that Then when it does come time to cook, I have everything ready to just kind of put in there. So sometimes you will see in a recipe that it'll say to go ahead and get started, but it might be a good idea to just get your prep work done first. Let's start with our onion. So I am practicing my knife handling skills by clenching my jaw, not my jaw, clenching my knife right here at the top of the blade with my index finger and my thumb on the back side. So I have a nice pinch on that. Then I wrap my fingers around the handle of the knife, and that's going to give me a lot of control when I'm going through my knife cuts. Then my other hand is making a claw. That way I can have a secure grip on what I'm cutting. So let's go ahead and do that. We want to do a nice dice with this guy. Let's put that to the side for a veggie broth later. So I'm going to try Jordan's method today of cutting an onion. And then I like to cut in half. It does say to go ahead and use the whole onion, one large onion. But if you're not a big onion person, you could use half. And if you have a super huge onion, like I do today, you could also use half. But I am an onion person, so I'm going to use my whole onion today. Let me just take my skin off here.
Absolutely. And Sajwa did just mention saving her scraps for broth. We mentioned this in every video. Those scraps that she's peeling off of her onion there, you can save and actually make a veggie broth out of. Just save them and put them in a bag and throw them in the freezer. When that gets full, you can make broth. If you want to learn how to do that, we actually have videos on our Facebook and YouTube that can show you how. All right.
So I'm just slicing down the onion, following the grooves that are already naturally present. And then I'm making sure not to go too far back, but far enough where I'm going to get a good even dice. Again, the thickness is according to what's comfortable for you and your family. So keep that in mind whenever you're using any vegetables for any recipes you're doing, honestly. You do want to remember, though, to keep them even or about the same size so that they can cook evenly. That's a really important thing to note, too, when you're in the kitchen. So I'm just going to slide through that guy. Got my claw, knife being held like so. And then I'm going to take this piece and I'm just going to cut it up. I like to make sure to use all of my onions because that's money I paid for.
Yeah.
We're going to use that. And then this little butt here, I'm saving that for my broth bag over there. So let's go through that one more time with the other half of my onion here. And as you'll notice, when I am scraping things to the side, I do use the back of my knife. I use the back of my knife and not the top sharp part because I don't want to dull my blade with continued scraping. So keep that in mind when you're in the kitchen and trying that new technique.
Absolutely. Something else to consider, if you keep your knives in a drawer, if you don't have guards on your knives, that's another thing that can really dull your knife really quickly. All right. So it looks like she's just making those cuts straight down again with the lines on that are naturally on the onion. And then down the other way. This is a really nice way to cut your onion. It kind of helps with, it's supposed to help you not cry as much. I don't know, Sajwa, do you think that helps?
It does help because I gotta say I'm not feeling too many tears, and I was just thinking that, like, wouldn't it be a shame to be crying all over Cooking Connected? But I don't have any tears right now. I'm actually feeling quite comfortable, and it's just so satisfying the way those diced pieces kind of fall apart. I love that.
Yeah.
So I've got my diced onion here. I'm gonna go ahead and put that in my secondary bowl I have right here for later. Scoop this up. Sorry, I have a small space, so all of you guys working in a small kitchen, you might know what this is like.
It's always a good idea to clean off your cutting board. You notice Sajwa's cutting board was filled with onion. Just make sure you're always cleaning off your cutting board continuously. If you're just working in a little space, especially, having that clear cutting board will make things a lot easier for you.
Exactly. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to work with my garlic. We always like to mention that really cool technique we use for peeling our garlic and, mincing. So I'm going to work with that right now. So I'm just putting my knife down flat. I have the blade facing away from me. There. Sure you can see that. And I'm going to just take my hand and push down on that. It doesn't have to be a hard slap or anything. nice and gentle, a lot of pressure with that guy. So I'm keep that going. Ooh, this is a strong one. I can already tell he's
Mhm.
not ready to crack.
I've
I,
been noticing that with my garlic too lately. I've been having a lot of issues pushing down.
oh, this guy is strong. He did crack a little bit, but still.
Yeah.
You know, it's not always a perfect science, but hey, let me
Yeah.
try a little. Oh, this guy. Mm-mm. It's okay.
There we go.
So again, I'm putting those scraps all together in a pile for my broth bag later. It's one of my garlics. Oops. I like to peel them all at the same time because then once I get to that mince, I can mince them all at the same time as well. Let's try again with this guy and see what happens.
Ooh, there it is.
Oh, there it is. It actually slipped down onto the floor, you guys. It
Oh
was
no.
cracked so well. It slipped clean out of its little shell there. So we are having a fun time with that. I'm gonna have to find that guy and rinse him off in a little bit. Let me try. Third time's a charm. This time I'll be able to crack it and hopefully keep it. All right, we got a little crack there. But these are some huge cloves, so
Yeah.
that is all right.
And Sajwa does have a nice tip. For those of you who aren't super comfortable with knives yet, what you can actually do is take a small cutting board and smush down on the garlic, just like you are with the knife, except using a cutting board instead. I know one of our viewers in the past said that she accidentally cut herself doing the first, this method that Sajwa is doing now. So if you don't want to try this quite yet, use a cutting board. It's a really great way to do that as well.
Yes, exactly. And I'm just peeling my garlic slowly but surely, you guys. This garlic doesn't want to cooperate today. But you know, hey, it gives us more time to spend with you guys.
That's
There we
right.
go. I got it. All right. So let me just cut off this little butt piece here. Show that in the camera. I'm going to cut that part off. Save that for my broth bag later. And I'm going to have to hunt down that other guy that flew away, but we'll handle that at another time. All right. So I am going to just go ahead. I am still practicing my knife handling skills, and I'm slicing down on here. Getting some slivers with that. We are going to mince that in a little bit. Go ahead and work with this guy too. And you know, with garlic, really take your time because it is so small, and it can be easy to just like chomp, and next thing you know, you hurt yourself. So be careful with that. So now I'm going to gather these guys together, and I'm working on my mince. We've talked about this technique beforehand, and it's just that rocking motion where I'm using my other hand to balance my knife, and use it to like hold my knife at the top, and then I'm just rotating using my hand that's holding the knife. So it's a two-hand gig here, but the more and smaller that you're able to cut up your garlic, the more flavor is going to be released. So that's just something to keep in mind with that.
And I actually just learned from one of our chefs, our volunteer chefs from Cooking Matters, that there's actually another way you can mince if you're not super comfortable with this method as well. If you pinch the top of the blade where Sajwa put her four fingers, you can actually pick up the knife and just kind of chop through it. Sajwa's been doing this technique for a while, and she can looks like she's can mince pretty quickly. Yep. So that second one there is just picking it up and
One here.
yep.
I have seen people do this one too. Yep.
Yep.
I'm going back to the old guy because I have been doing this one for a while. And with all the time we had sitting around with this garlic, I'm about ready to cut it up and be through. Oh, it's funny. I don't usually have any trouble with garlic. It's usually the onions that get me.
Oh yeah.
So, what a funny turn of events. All right. So that's pretty good. I like that size there. That's comfortable. I am going to add that to this bowl too with my onions, just because we are going to be cooking them together. Well, in a minute. So let me clean off my cutting board.
And of course, if you do have pre-minced garlic at home, it tends to be a little more expensive when you buy pre-minced. I always like the taste of fresh garlic, but you can use the pre-minced as well, or maybe even a little garlic powder if you don't have fresh garlic on hand.
Alrighty, so we've done that. The next thing we are going to want to cut up is our cilantro. We do bring this up in almost every video, but it is an optional option. I really enjoy cilantro. I've already went ahead and rinsed mine. So I'm just going to cut up a little bit. We are going to be using this as a garnish, as well as a little bit in with our recipe. And I know that some people don't use the stems of the cilantro. I do. I see no problem with that. By the time I finish mincing it, you can hardly tell it's there. As you just saw, I just went ahead and took my 2 bundles, divided them in half, kind of flipped them so there's one top with ends, and then the other side had top with ends as well. Let me make sure I explain that. And then I went ahead and folded that together like so to create a little bundle. And then I'm practicing my claw here, and I'm going to cut with over this here on this side. So let me go ahead and get started with that. And yeah, I just start with cutting at first, and then I will go back and do a mince. And yeah, I use the stems just because with, cilantro, it doesn't hurt. And that way I can get the most out of my, most use out of my cilantro stocks. And I'm just getting the most out of my money that I spent on this item. So keep that in mind. Yeah. So see, I've just done my first cut. Now I'm going to go through with that mince again, okay? Let's go through with that.
As Sajua mentioned, this is an optional ingredient, but it does go really nicely on the top of your curry. I don't really like cilantro. I've mentioned this in a few videos, but I do actually like it on top of this recipe.
Hey.
Yeah.
And you can go as small as you like. I like to just kind of make sure that the leaves are, cut up there. Looks pretty even for the most part, and that's pretty comfortable for me, something like so. So that's what I'm going to do with my cilantro. Just carefully scraping my blade. Just want to mention that. And then the next piece of my prep work is I want to go ahead and work with my lime. We are going to be needing a little bit of lime juice with this guy. So if you do buy your lime in the concentrated form, or not the concentrated form, but it comes in those little bottles that are already like pre-squeezed and it's just the juice for you, that's a really convenient way of going about it. Otherwise, fresh is always an option, and I've got mine here. So one of the tips we like to mention is with limes and lemons as well, you could pop this in the microwave for like 10 to 15 seconds. Stay there and watch it. You don't want to have lemons and limes exploding in your microwave, but you're going to pop that in there for a couple of seconds. And the heat is actually going to help break up the membranes inside of this. And so that way you'll be able to get more juice out of it, and it'll be a bit softer. And then the other way you can help get more out of your lime is actually by setting it on a hard surface like so, and just adding a little pressure, doing a little roll with that. So I'm going to do that for a couple of seconds. And I'm going to do it on my other one too.
So this recipe does call for the juice of 1 to 2 limes. If you are working with the version that is in the little container that Sajwa had mentioned, I believe on the back of the container it will tell you exactly how much to add. So they should have like little conversions.
It does, yep. So I'm just going to cut this in half. And now, because I'm done with my prep work, I left these things on my cutting board. I didn't need to put them in a separate thing. I'm going to set my cutting board to the side to make space. We're going to work with our canned items, and then we're going to whip this bad boy up in our pot really quick, okay? So let me just set this to the side. All right. Now, let's go ahead and work with our cans. I've already wiped the top of my cans already. And so the 3 canned options, we're going to be using some coconut milk today, some crushed tomatoes, and then we're going to be using some garbanzo beans, or chickpeas is another name for them. So I'm going to start out with my chickpeas. I'm going to open this can up, and I'm going to go ahead and rinse my chickpeas. This is a really great step when you're using a canned bean, any of them. Canned vegetables, this is a great step to do. It's going to rinse off some of that extra sodium that's used in the preserving process. And it's also going to rinse off any other preservatives that might be in there. So let me just go ahead and rinse that really quick.
Absolutely. Something else that some people don't really think about as well is, while Sajwa is doing this, is actually washing your can opener. We like to talk about in class, it's just important to be washing your can opener periodically, just because sometimes it does dip into the food a little bit. We did have one of our volunteers bring up that if you have a cat that has food that you open up, you might be getting cat food on your can opener. So it's always really important to wash your can opener, wash your tools that you're using in the kitchen for food safety purposes.
Now that's a wonderful tip. I do like to bring that one up in my classes too, making sure that I'm washing my can opener because you do not want to have any of those extra things added to your food.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And then let me open up my coconut milk. I'm just getting all of my prep work done so that once I get started, I can keep moving through this recipe.
So this is kind of just another step to Sajwa's mise en place that she's doing, making sure that you have everything ready so then you can just go down the list of steps and throw in what you need to throw in that's already measured out.
Exactly. Yep. So I'm gonna put my veggie scraps to the side a little bit there. All right, so I've got all that out, and I do want to mention very quickly before I get started is that I have already measured out my seasonings for today. So one of the ingredients is for a masala seasoning, and that might be a little tricky to find in the grocery store, or you might not be willing to make the commitment to that spice because maybe you haven't tried it yet. This might be the first time you're doing this recipe. So Jordan actually filled me in on a really great spice. There we go. Spice mix alternative that turns out pretty good according to her. She's done this recipe quite a few times. So I've got my recommended amount of curry. That's a 1 tablespoon of curry there. And then we've done a 1 part allspice to the cumin. Sorry, I almost forgot what it was called for a second. So we have the 1 part to the 4 over there. And so that's how I've got my spices. And that's going to give me a very similar flavor. And then also the recipe says you can salt as according to your taste, and you can also add cayenne pepper according to your taste. So keep that in mind. Let's go ahead and move forward with our cooking aspect here today. I'm going to move my camera a little closer to the stove, and maybe I'll be able to move this guy over here. We gotta do a little TV magic here.
Looks like.
All right.
Perfect. There we go.
Oh, there we go. Okay. So I want to get this guy to show a little bit more of my pot. There we go. Oh my, the camera keeps wanting to go off, huh? Okay. Well, let's just get started with this one first, and I'll get that guy back online in a little bit. So what we're going to do is heat our oil in our pan. I'm going to be using a little bit of avocado oil today, so I have some of that on hand. I'm sure any oil would be fine. Mm-hmm. So I'm just doing a little bit of that. And then that's actually 2 teaspoons and a little bit more because I like to have my pan coated. After that, you are going to want to add your onion and saute, and then we're going to add our garlic and saute that. So I'm just going to wait a second for that to heat up.
Perfect. And as Sajwa mentioned, for that spice substitute, so that is 4 parts of the cumin and then 1 part allspice, correct, Sajwa?
Yep, 4 parts cumin, 1 part allspice.
So these are really great. It's a really great substitute that I've used. If you go online, you can also find other substitutes for maybe spices that you have if you don't want to do the masala spice blend. But maybe you will be making a few more curries, so you can find that spice blend.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, after trying this first, if you decide that you like it, you might be wanting to commit to it. So then you might want to go ahead and take the plunge and buy the new spice. But it is also possible to get the kind of a similar flavor with some spices you already have on hand.
Absolutely.
So I'm just going to be, cooking my onion in here, sauteing that. And we just want to do that until the onion is transparent. And then after the onion becomes transparent, we are going to go ahead and add our garlic. So that's just going to be a moment here. I wish my other camera was working, but my Shift View had a low battery, so guess
Oh,
we're out of business there.
that's all right.
All right, though.
Awesome. So this recipe is also really nice because it does involve some of the canned options. I know I really liked having these items in my pantry kind of just always, so then I knew I always had a meal ready, so I could always make a chickpea curry. I use chickpeas quite a bit. We'll talk a little bit later about some more items with beans. Beans are a really great protein source. We've talked about that quite a bit. Um, and we involve beans in a lot of our recipes for Cooking Matters. So beans are a really great option to add to your recipe.
I agree. I think they are definitely an overlooked protein option, but they're really great, and they're a great source of fiber too.
Yeah, they
Well,
definitely
my
have.
onions have become transparent. I'm just going to go ahead and add my garlic in here, and I'm sauteing that for about 30 to 60 seconds. It's going to take a moment here, and I can smell the garlic already. It's smelling really great, you guys.
This is definitely the best smell in the world, onions and garlic.
They are a dynamic duo.
I know.
All right, so now that I've got that, the next thing we're going to do is actually toast our spices. So this step, we are going to be adding our spices to this mixture, and we're going to be cooking it for about 1 to 2 minutes. So I just turned it down to a low heat, adding my spices, and I'm cooking that with my garlic and my onions. It smells lovely.
This recipe is also really nice because it's all in one pan,
Yeah.
um, very low dishes. So I really enjoy that aspect of this as well. So, what's our next step, Sajwa? I forget.
The next step is to work with our chickpeas and tomatoes. We've already drained and rinsed our chickpeas, so I'm going to add those. And then we're also going to add our crushed tomatoes at this point. You could use other forms of tomatoes, so like a tomato sauce or, canned tomatoes that are just diced. I decided to go with the crushed option, so I'm adding that in there. And I'm going to give that a good stir. And once we've added this needs maybe about 5 minutes to cook. But of course, everything is going to have time to cook all together. I think the total cook time on this recipe is 20 minutes. So it'll have plenty of time for all those flavors to meld together really nicely. Right, so that's in there. We've got that on a low heat here.
And that'll cook for about 5 minutes, you said?
Yes, about 5 minutes. So if you want to do a little nutrition, you totally could.
All right, guys, let's get into some nutrition while we wait for our curry to cook a little bit. So as I mentioned, we're going to talk a little bit more about kind of basics of beans. Sajwa already mentioned that they have a lot of fiber, but they have a lot of health benefits. Not only do they have a lot of protein, they've got a lot of vitamins and minerals that we need. So they're really high in folate, potassium, iron, and magnesium. They also contain the healthy fats and fiber that we need, and they are also low in fat. So they're just packed nutritionally, and they're just a really awesome option. So beans are a really great substitute for meat. So not only do they have all these health benefits, but they also typically cost less than meat as well. I don't know how many times I've gone to the grocery store and looked at my receipt and realized that the meat was the most expensive thing on my receipt. So if you think of a few meals that you can maybe switch out some beans with, that can save you a little bit of money. Do a meatless Monday maybe. Not only are you getting those health benefits, but it's also good on your wallet too. You can get beans in a few different forms. The most popular are canned, dried, and I have seen some frozen. And every once in a while, I've seen fresh as well. So all of these options are all really great options to buy from. Um, looks like your coconut milk. That looks awesome.
Yeah, I'm just mixing it together. Sometimes you'll notice with coconut milk, there is that top layer, which can be a little bit more solid. And then the bottom layer you'll see with milk. You can go ahead and give that a stir and it'll just come back together. There's a little bit of separation sometimes with coconut milk.
Beautiful. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about dried beans, which is actually one of my favorites to get for beans. Dried beans are a really cost-effective option because they come in a really big package, but they do take a little bit of work. Some of my participants have told me that they maybe don't know how to prepare those dried beans, so we're just going to quickly go over what you need to do when you're working with dried beans. So the first thing you're going to do is you're just going to quickly look through your beans and throw out any beans that are kind of shriveled or discolored. And then the next thing you're going to do is you're going to rehydrate your beans by soaking them. So you can do a quick soak if you're kind of in a hurry, or you can do an overnight soak. The quick soak, what you're going to do is you're going to fill a pot with water and add the beans. You're going to bring that to a boil and let that boil for about 5 minutes. As soon as that 5 minutes is done, you're going to go ahead and turn off the heat and then leave it covered and then let it sit for 1 hour. After that hour is done, you'll go ahead and drain the water and then rinse the beans. So that's a quick soak. Next, you can do an overnight soak. I like to do this kind of on the weekends if I have a little extra time and I know I'm making maybe a lot of recipes with beans that week. You can fill a bowl with 3 cups of cold water to 1 cup of beans. So for every 1 cup of beans, you'll need 3 cups of cold water. And you'll let that soak for 8 to 12 hours at room temperature. And you're going to drain that after the 8 to 12 hours and rinse as well. So if you don't use those beans right away that you've just rehydrated, you can either stick in the fridge or the freezer. And then when you're ready to use them, like if you've frozen them and you're ready to use them, you can just go ahead and defrost and then prepare them like you would with canned beans. So they're a really great option to like prep ahead of time. As I said, I like to prep beans on like a Sunday if I'll prep like whole grain rice and beans. And that's just kind of a quick throw together lunch for me. Beans can also go in all sorts of different recipes, so they're really versatile. I like to put lentils in my spaghetti. For like a meat sauce kind of substitute, I'll throw in lentils instead of the meat. You can do curries like we're doing today. I've seen chickpea nuggets, which are kind of a chicken nugget made out of chickpeas. And finally, you can use beans to stretch meals. So with our turkey tacos, which is another video we've made, we add beans to the taco mixture. It kind of adds more product into that meat so we can serve more people. So I know there are a lot of recipes that you can add beans to kind of stretch that meal out a little bit. So that's kind of our bean basic today. How are we looking over there, Sajwa?
You're looking really good. We are just about ready to add the rest of our ingredients. So let's go ahead and put our coconut milk in there. Around. I'm going to add that in. It's going to be nice and creamy. I want to get all of that out of there.
Yeah. That's the part that makes it creamy, so make sure you get everything out of the can. It's definitely an awesome part of this curry.
Oh yeah. And then next we do need to add 1 teaspoon of some maple syrup. That's going to give it a little bit of a sweetness there. So I'm going to pour that in. All right. That seems like a strange ingredient, but it works. And then we're going to give that a bit of a stir. And then you could also add your salt at this point. I'm going to actually wait and add my salt at the end. I like to wait to see what my meal is like completed. And then that way I'll add my salt. Also, it can be helpful. You could just sprinkle a little bit on top once you get ready to serve yourself, because having those fresh grains of salt on top will really bring out the salt, and so you won't have to continually add more if you're cooking with it. So keep that in mind. So now that I've stirred in my coconut milk and I've added the rest of my syrup and such, I'm going to go ahead and add my cilantro. I'm going to stir that in, and then I'm going to add my lime juice. And with that, we are pretty much at the end of this recipe. But I mean, there's a lot of juice coming out of this guy.
Yeah.
Might be because we did those techniques earlier, rolling it and such really helps. So that's one.
Yeah. Sajwa does have a really great tip for those kind of extra lime rinds that you just used, the ones that she's squeezing. She throws them into water. So a nice flavored water. I know I like to add fruits and stuff to my water as well. So if you're getting kind of sick of the way water's tasting, add some lime in there and use those up.
Yes, that's actually, I'm glad you brought that up because I do like to bring that up in my classes. I love saving those rinds for water later on.
Mm-hmm. Just another good way to use everything you're buying to as much as possible. You know, you're not wasting any money that way.
Exactly. So I'm just squeezing my last half of my lime, all of that good juice in there. Trying to be careful and not drop it in there too.
Yeah.
I seem to be clumsy today. Oh, sorry. All right, I've gotten that. And then finally, we're going to add our cilantro. And then you could save some of this to top on as a topping for this recipe too. Keep that in mind. So I'm going to just scoop it up. So, and I believe it's about a 1/4 cup that they recommend. I really like cilantro, so I am going to add a little bit more. And then I'm going to just save the rest of it as a topping if I need it. Otherwise, it's always going to work fine in another recipe. So I'm going to give that a stir. Ooh, this smells so good.
If you do have leftover cilantro, I know I have tomatoes coming out my ears right now. You can make a pico de gallo out of it, kind of just a nice quick pico with your cilantro, tomatoes, onions, just throw that together and make homemade chips like our mango salsa in our mango salsa video.
Yeah,
A nice kind of snack for you.
that's a great tip. Yep. And so that's going to be our dish. I am going to serve us up a bowl so we can see what that looks like. Let me go ahead and do that. But this is going to need to cook for about 20 minutes. I'm going to serve mine up just because my chef camera went out of business. So I want you guys to be able to see what it looks like.
Absolutely. And this recipe goes really great with a rice. We like to do jasmine rice. You can also do a whole grain rice, which would be a really great option as well.
Oh, I agree. And also, I saw that it could be served topping some cauliflower might be nice. So that might be a good way to add even more vegetables into the recipe. So just keep that in mind. But let me see if I can angle this camera well enough so you guys can see what it looks like in there.
Oh,
See that
yeah.
without me spilling?
Definitely see it. That looks awesome, Sajwa.
Oh, yeah. There we go. Yep. So again, serving that over rice, brown rice would be a great option. Again, vegetables, all of those things would work really well. You could even do some
Oh, Sajwa, you're on mute.
whole grain rice noodles, which I found before in the store. That works really well too. So keep that in mind. There's just a lot of variety of the things you can do with this recipe.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Sajwa, for that demonstration. It looks beautiful. Before we wrap up here, let's just do a quick My Plate review. So let's see here. We have, if we add a rice, we've got a grain. With our chickpeas, we've got our protein, our vegetables. We've got, let's see here, we've got our onions in there. We've got, oh, tomatoes, or tomatoes could be fruit too, depending. And then we actually don't have dairy today because we use coconut milk. So if you're using a regular milk, that would be your dairy, but this is a vegan option. So it does not contain dairy or meat. You can make it a non-vegan option by adding that dairy, or if you wanted to add meat, you can also do that. So again, thank you, Sajwa, for that demonstration. And thank you all so much for tuning into this week's Cooking Connected. Please let us know if you make this recipe or any of our other recipes. We really love to know what you guys are doing with these recipes, if you changed it, if you liked it, if you didn't. Comment below. Check us out on Facebook. if you have any suggestions for future recipes, we would love some suggestions. That would be really awesome. Thank you again to Cheryl Malik with 40aprons.com for today's recipe. Again, we're going to be posting that in the description box below, 40aprons.com for today's recipe, as well as the survey. So don't let me forget about that. Please take our survey. It really helps us make these videos better and continue this work. So just real quick, here's our program code again, which will be in the description. It is E097393. All right, so finally, please join us again next week. We will have another video for you guys next Thursday at 2 p.m. And we'll make another healthy, delicious, affordable meal together. So thank you, everyone. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, everybody.